Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, dear viewer, wherever you are. Quite a packed house this evening, talking about a very, very dull subject, and that's counter UAS. But thankfully, we're also joined by Joshua, who's going to tell us about a product he's launching tomorrow. So that'll be more interesting than the first part of this chat, I think. So let's try. I always get this wrong. I think on the right-hand side of the screen, we've got Rob Thompson, then we've got Kevin Finisterre, then Joshua, then Tian, and then, of course, Bruce sat on the end there. Let's leap into this. Counter UAS is a phrase that is becoming, to me anyway, the phrase of 2017. If you do a Google Trends search, it doesn't exist. It's not yet a phrase. It's not a thing that's happened. I love the Gartner hype curve thing. So I'm placing CUAS down over here on the Gartner hype curve. That's the 2016 one. And interestingly, UAS are just entering the peak of inflated expectations. And I reckon that's about right. Counter UAS, that's getting them out of the way, and I don't see the point because look, this is accidental gun deaths in the USA. In 1981 there was 1,800 accidental shootings, then we're down in 2013 to 400 plus, and so far, to my understanding, drones, 0 points. So what on earth is the point of counter UAS? So who am I going to throw that out first? I'm going to throw that at Rob first. What's the point, Rob?
Well, drones shouldn't always be flying in all places, for starters. And I realize there's no deaths yet, and I can't defend that point as far as the regulatory concerns. But as far as counter drones concerns, there's many points to defend. It's nothing different than a facility being an asset and the same credit card in your pocket being an asset, and someone coming over and taking your credit card, or someone flying over and looking at your asset. That's how I compare it to.
All right. Now, Kevin, you gave a fantastic chat at our show last week or the week before, whichever it was about, and it sort of spoke to CUS. Is there a point? You tell me. Is there a point for them?
I honestly think that point is very situational, and it depends on, kind of as Rob mentioned, what asset you're protecting specifically. Before I came out and spoke for you guys, I presented a threat model that was actually a massaged variant of Microsoft's Dread threat model. I had removed the final value and called it Dream and made it more appropriate for drones. Basically, each category has a gradient. D is for damage, for example. R is for reproducibility. And you need to discuss this gradient with your peers. In my opinion, almost per location or per situation, to have an intelligent discussion about how much of a threat something is to that asset or to that individual, for example. Video surveillance is a threat to some people. And obviously getting killed is a threat for a lot of people, and that kind of represents a good chunk of that gradient. Many of us here may care about video surveillance, many of us may not. I think all of us can appreciate getting killed, however. So it's kind of a tricky question to answer as far as why does it matter. It really depends on a lot of aspects.
All right, so obviously I was trying to be devil's advocate and nasty about it. Perhaps could one of you unpack what not only the perhaps what the threats are, but also what has happened. Things have happened in the last year that haven't happened before. So maybe, I don't know, up to you. Which one of you guys want to unpack the threat or the danger at the moment?
You can speak on a couple, Kevin, if you like, and then I can wrap up.
I'd speak.
Yeah, I see Josh raises.
Yeah. Go ahead, Josh. Go.
I don't know the etiquette here. I'm just going to jump in. So I think there's something very interesting about what you're saying though with the CDC and accidental gun deaths, and that's that one word, right? Accidental. And I think the value of counter UAS technology really lies in the fact that it may not be accidental. There are malicious actors here. And so there could be gun deaths that are not accidental. And so in that case, the Kevlar vest makes a lot of sense in all this context. So in this case, I think maybe counter UAS is the Kevlar vest of the drone world. When you're looking at places where things could happen maliciously, it's really important to say we have a defense mechanism against this. So your analogy is well received, but I think maybe we need to tweak it a little bit for a malicious actor who's using a drone in a bad way versus just, hey, somebody flew their drone over the wrong place at the wrong time or within the 30-mile bubble of the Super Bowl or this TFR or that TFR. There's people who could really do bad things, and I think they pose a huge threat to the public and to responsible operators who are trying to do the right thing.
So the FAA defines the operator in 3 different categories. There's the first category is a pilot who was ignorant of the regulations and they flew and didn't know anything. The second category is the pilot that knew they were busting regulations but went ahead and flew. And then the third category is any person who flew with malicious intent. And that's how the FAA diagnoses anyone that's going to be a threat in the NAS.
And what are they going to do about it? Rob, you talk to grown-ups. You're perhaps the only grown-up here. So what are they going to do about it?
Basically, when the reauth comes, there will be language in the reauth that's going to allow certain entities, mostly critical infrastructure, and we haven't quite nailed out what the definitions are for those people. At minimal, any federal agency, but there'll be language in the reauth that will allow people to use these things that are, obviously need to use them, and not just someone that wants to do malicious harm with actually, the Kevlar vest. I really like that analogy.
Yeah, I think he's won the conversation there. But that was a great analogy. So when you say people that want to interdict or stop this threat, are you meaning shoot down techniques? What are you meaning? Because that is a bit of a worry to us. On our chat several times we've spoken about it. You can disrupt aircraft at a distance via RF and other stuff and magic wiggly amps, but who knows where it's going to fall. So is that where you're leading that?
That's correct. So we have to make the first distinction. Is this for defense purposes and military, or is this for civilian protection? Because the first thing that enters my mind is the mitigation or defeat tactics. Within those parameters in theater, we honestly don't care if there's any collateral damage as much as someone in a civilian sector. Not necessarily do we even need the equipment to come back home. So when you're dealing in theater, it's much different. And also, I was just alerted to the mindset of the person creating the threat is almost undiagnosable when you go from a criminal intent, let's say someone loading contraband into a prison, to actually someone who's a terrorist. It's a completely different ballgame. The mindset, the dedication, the lengths they're willing to go to complete the mission. And so within mitigation, there's kinetic stuff that knocks drones out of the sky, and then there's also non-kinetics. Kevin's company, Department 13, is one of the only U.S. companies that is a non-kinetic drone mitigation system. Kevin, maybe you'll talk a little bit about Mesmer.
Yes, so our platform gives you some ability over a particular geographic area to detect traditional RC signals or drones, if you want to use that buzzword. And within a particular subset of popular, highly proliferated models and platforms, we have the ability to offer our customers some mitigation options. And those range from being able to tell a drone to land in place to being able to tell it to land in a specific location, or in some cases we could even upload a waypoint mission if we so chose to do so. It really depends on the level of interaction that we get out of the protocol that the platform speaks.
So Kevin, will you entertain me for a second? I have a question.
Sure.
So in the US, we have these stickers on the back of everything that says, this device must accept any interference which it is sent and must not create any interference by which it can interfere with other things, right? This is the part 15 of the FCC something, something, something. How is it that you are able to do what you are able to do?
So I can tell you first off that I am not a jammer or not a jamming platform because the FCC is classified us as such, and that's a real big important distinction here in the United States. The other thing I'm going to mention is I'm not a lawyer, So it's best to consult your legal counsel and whatnot with regards to your rights as either an agency or an entity to exercise those options. A lot of that stuff ultimately lies in the hands of our customers as far as being operators. At the end of the day, I'm just an engineer that does the technical work. And for me, a lot of this is analogous to what I used to do previously, which was computer security work. And I've done things like furnished, for lack of a better word, exploits to security vulnerabilities, which allow people to do a number of things, ranging from secure equipment to compromised equipment, again, depending on their legal rights to do so.
So I want to jump in now. So how do I sign up? I've got big company X is my big company. So what gives me the right to take over control, shoot down, or put on a waypoint mission, something else? How do I get that right to do that? That seems crazy to me.
You don't have the right just yet. Unless you're a federal agent of the United States of America, you can't use any equipment like this unless you've been given permission. And so there's several different methods that you can go through to get this permission. And one of the things I'm working on right now is to change the permissions to allow not just federal officers to use these, but people that are responsible for protecting critical infrastructure. And we have specific definitions for what meets the criteria of critical infrastructure. Can be energy, communications, anything that would impact or have disastrous results if we took control over.
Now the critical infrastructure.
Sure.
Sorry, Rob, but the critical infrastructure thing is kind of a critical conversation over there, because are you not about to roll out a whole load of things like people are lining up to do their power line inspections and they're just about to be turned into critical infrastructure, which means that your Part 107 company, I'm changing the topic a little bit, sorry, but it seems to me that critical infrastructure is about to become a critical topic over there, and not many people are keeping an eye on it and have realized that they are setting their businesses up to provide services that won't be available to them once you and Kevin sort this out. It's you and Kevin's fault.
As a critical infrastructure owner, at that point you have access to the airspace there, and through systems such as Kevin, you can authorize folks to fly in those areas. Much differently than DJI's geofence, because this is a point of person. It has to come from an actual antenna with the equipment that you're operating. It's not hooked up online or anywhere else.
So I'm sure Bruce has probably got a million questions. I'm going to shut up in a minute. I was amazed that to learn. I've been playing with ADSB. I know you're not a fan of ADSB, Rob, but I was amazed to learn that you can opt out of ADSB. So that makes ADSB pointless. You can pay a fee and your aeroplanes disappear, which strikes me as crazy. I never realized that, because that makes it a pointless system if some people are hidden and others aren't. What equipment will I need to put on my aircraft then to be seen by or not be taken over by Kevin? Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to have the keys to that? To this aircraft's okay, this one's not. I'm moving this where I shouldn't be, but I'm interested in knowing that.
I can't speak about that. It's proprietary with equipment and with regulatory discussions that are at this point closed door. But what I can tell you is that every drone is unique, just like a MAC address. Kevin, if you want to say something, you can, but I can't speak on that.
Yeah, what was the question as far as who's going to control what now?
Well, I have got a contract with power line company XYZ, and I need to run my drones down these power lines. Who am I going to talk to make sure that you, Kevin, don't shoot me down?
Well, again, I think the misconception that anybody can just quote shoot you down is a misnomer. For one, you need to be at this point in time doing something malicious. It is implied. And you would need to have gained the attention of law enforcement, probably the same people that would scramble F-16 jets if you flew your gyrocopter over the Pentagon. I don't know who has that authority, but it's not your casual everyday person. Like your neighbor isn't going to necessarily have that authority. I think to imply that this sort of power would be accessible out of normal law enforcement uses and stuff like that is not necessarily something that we can imply. But again, I don't know who has, the ability to do these sort of things normally.
So I want to ask the follow-up question. There are public exploits for these protocols that you guys are talking about. I think it was just, a year or so ago, we saw a really nice remote operation exploit for the Spectrum radio system. So college researcher had a way to take over control of the Spectrum radio system. So what you guys are saying is that nobody can do this, but what you're saying is nobody can do this until somebody can do this, because the minute that exploit becomes public, just like this.
Between technically able to do it and legally able to do it. There's a big distinction there. And to be clear, I think there was even the gentleman that put that work out. I had the privilege of proofreading that work before it hit the streets. And we made some comments as a company, Department 13, that specific, quote, exploit, as it were, had been well known in intelligence communities. And, it's been around for a while. So, again, we're discussing the semantics of technical ability to do something versus legality to do something. And of course, anybody can research this and find their own exploit.
So part of the joy of this, right, for you guys must be that there is no real software updates for these kind of radios, right? All of these receivers, all of these transmitters exist in the public, the public realm. You can go buy it off the shelf. You really can't do a firmware update to your, Futaba receiver or your Spectrum receiver right now. You can do it to the transmitter, but there's kind of this joy that if you find something, it's out there, and it's going to be out there for a long time on a lot of hardware.
Yeah, I don't know that I personally derive joy from the exploits anymore. I mean, that's an industry I've played and had fun in for, a decade and a half. At this point, what I'm personally deriving joy from is I know that a number of us have folks that are in the armed services, for example, and are over, quote, in theater, and they're dealing with people dropping stuff on their heads. So I'm taking joy out of knowing that even if it's a small little bit of a hurdle that I can place in front of those guys, that I'm at least doing my part with my technical ability to make sure that our brothers, sisters, family members aren't dealing with these people doing what they do.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Well made. Sorry, Rob. A fair point. Well made there, Kevin. And I think I've driven this away from where I wanted it to go. You spoke at the show about, well, there's two parts to it, really, isn't there? There is the fact that some people didn't predict the weaponization, and we've got Bruce, Captain. Oh, he's gone. I mentioned his name, and he's gone. But Captain Cruise Missile himself there. Bruce is there. Oh, he came back again. We've got him there, and Bruce very much predicted how this was going to go many years ago, and of course, all of us are too young to have remembered that. So, and you pointed out that getting it wrong with where this technology might go and making rosy pictures for it, and that other companies are very much sending data home. Maybe I've led into that very badly, Kevin. Maybe you can unpack that a little.
I think what you're getting at is actually some of the things I've been tweeting about earlier today. There was an article that broke on your guys' site about the potential audio monitoring, among other bits of data that may be picked up by DJI's Go app and other third-party apps, to be fair, that control drones. But this is the particular hot topic of the day. And what was alleged was that the app collects audio from around the phone as it's being used. And if you take that at face value, it sounds pretty malicious. And I'm going to pipe up and actually defend them a little bit. It's not just that when you blatantly open up the app, that it's just collecting data completely. What actually occurs is that if you have a particular setting enabled, which I believe is the default setting, when you tell the app to capture video from the drone, it also captures video or audio from the phone itself. There are two types of files stored on your phone at the end of the day. One is the quote cached video, which is what's stored from the FPV feed. That video is stored with the audio of whatever's going on around the end user. So if you're sitting there cussing while you're flying, that's actually stored in that file. Then there's also the video file from the drone itself, which has no audio built into it directly. So when you're in the app, you can actually go back into the gallery and you can play both the remote video and the locally cached audio. And it's really easy to confirm that they do record that audio at that particular time. And I spent a good chunk of the day basically use some apps that just detect when the microphone is in use and looking through the reversed decompiled source code, basically trying to confirm when it was and wasn't on and whatnot. And that's basically what I found. The question at this point is that locally cached audio file with the captured remote FPV video uploaded to their remote portal at any point in time, along with other bits of data. And I cannot confirm or deny whether or not that happens.
And what would you do with it if you had that audio? Would that link to anything else, or is anything else hidden in that audio file?
I mean, ultimately, I think the bigger question people are asking is what data is that app sending back and forth, whether or not it's in that specific audio file or any of the other communications. And at a quick cursory glance, there appears to be some generic analytics type things built in.
Evan, I want to jump in here for a second. We've done man-in-the-middle attacks with DJI Go. And part of this is part of why we're going to talk about flight deck later. But I think the other thing that's really important here is you're not just getting audio, you're getting a lot of other context, including location, including craft type, and then some cursory information about the user that's logged in. So yeah, it may just seem like audio, but there could be other things that have additional context. So even if you're kind of just pouring through and doing audio transcription on this, it's like, well, let's listen to what people are talking about when they're flying near this critical infrastructure or this landmark. You never know what you can pick up.
In your man-in-the-middle, and you actually have confirmed that the cached file with the audio is pushed back up to their server?
No, I have not confirmed that, but we've done man-in-the-middle. You're absolutely right. They are sending back some kind of ads, analytics, ads. They're firing pixels. There's a lot of different things going on there. But my point is the additional context of the location that is going back. And so, wow, what if we want to listen to things happening near this critical infrastructure? There's a good opportunity there for additional context.
So yeah, I want to be clear as responsible security researchers to draw a line between those two different things, because what we say could very easily turn into a headline tomorrow. And again, the alleged collection of audio and it being stored locally in the device and the uploading of statistical data are currently two parallel things, and I haven't heard anybody step out and confirm that the locally cached data is subsequently uploaded as part of the statistical data collection. Doesn't mean that's not something to possibly be alarmed or be aware about, but that's definitely a big differentiation to pipe up and say that they are doing that versus they
not saying that. Not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's additional context that's sent, and if one were to do this, it would be a good opportunity to help parse and add context to that data if it were happening. Can't confirm, haven't looked. Totally agree, good call.
Is it not time then, if we can't confirm nor deny this or whatever, we want to avoid legal stuff, to decide that we need yet another acronym, because this industry thrives on acronyms. So we need one that has something to do with sending data back home. I'll give you guys 5 minutes to think about that, but we need to decide on that acronym, and we need to own that acronym. Bruce, we're keeping
as long as you use the word snarf, I'm in.
Oh, all right. Well, you said it first, so the word snarf is in it. And we need to sort of have something else on top of that. Something is perhaps going on, and I see people now beginning to say we're definitely off DJI's Christmas list now, but people are beginning to to say, does this affect other manufacturers? That's what I've seen coming out today. So any word from Autel or Unique or anyone like that? Any thoughts on that? No, there's no thoughts. Well, so it's saying it's only one. There's only one manufacturer doing this. Kevin, do we know?
Yeah, generally speaking, I've got to imagine if we take these apps apart, that many of them do similar things. I know a big topic last month was the no-fly zones, for example. And Tiananmen Square is, of course, a hot topic in that regard. I know for a fact that Zero, as a manufacturer, also has a Tiananmen Square. I don't know how heavily it's enforced, but I'm aware of that restriction or warning or alert in their software as well. And that's just a random one that I'm aware of. So to give DJI some credit in that regard, they're certainly not the only one. And I think we'd be foolish to think that other Chinese-based manufacturers weren't doing similar things. As far as data collection, we've all done the click through. I agree. I don't care what this app is doing when we install DJI. Somebody pointed out it blatantly spells out that it could collect data, may do it for ads, analytics, statistics, other reasons. So read the things that you click yes to. I think a lot of these answers are already there.
Yeah, again, a fair point, well made. So, Rob, when can we expect all these big changes in legislation to allow the shoot downs or whatever? Not, I said the wrong thing, haven't I? And the reason I'm knocking it around a bit is I'm interested that Kevin's talking about taking over systems in some ways. When I was at Farnborough last year, guys had big buttons with 5.8, 2.4 and whatever on their systems, and it really was and GPS. It went through all the different GPS frequencies, and he wouldn't tell me what they were. All these buttons were for, but they were all marked 2.4, 5.8, 1.2. It's like, I wonder what those are for. And that was plainly a shoot down system. But when
that's a jamming.
When are we expecting this coming?
Well, I can't specifically tell you any dates or anything like that. I gave you a time frame that the reauth is due in September, but it's not going to be like, all right, everyone, turn the boxes on. That's just not how it works. It's going to trickle down. There's going to be programs. There's going to be rollouts. It's not like, I personally don't believe one day you'll wake up and now there's all this airspace you can't fly in. It's going to take a long time. Currently, there's federal agencies that are trying to use the equipment, but as we pointed out, Kevin's system is super unique. You can't use jamming stuff very good in urban environments or around airports. And what I mean by that is there's a candle sitting on the table and we pull out a fire hose to put it out. Kevin's is very precise. It knows the exact temperature to put things out, and it's like a little squirt gun. And it goes over and says, okay, we don't want you to be burning anymore. That's very different. And since it's not considered illegal in some parameters that we're working through right now, I personally think that's the best mitigation method, because it just makes the drone go away. It doesn't actually, create harm, or there's no ballistics or kinetics involved. As far as what companies should expect, though, is if you're already within the parameters of critical infrastructure, then you could seek out some talks to have your company in line to start using this in a rollout, testing, or research program.
It's interesting stuff. Bruce, it was 29 minutes and you haven't got a word in edgeways. What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was quite surprised when I registered, or I went to set up a DJI NASA Lite, which is the bottom of the scale when it comes to DJI products. I still had to register with DJI, give them an email address and click on the box and everything. All I wanted to do was change a few parameters. Why do they need to know who I am? It's really concerning that this company wants to collect so much data, and as others have said, we don't know if it's going back to them. There is always the potential that it will go back to them, and if it does, then what does that mean, even for issues of national security? I mean, these things are being used by government agencies and all sorts of things, possibly by the military, I don't know, but there's a lot of information there. Do we really want it going back to China? I mean, there's all sorts of embargoes on information going to China and things, but people got this open door where DJI seems to be able to send whatever it likes back there. If they want to. Why isn't there more noise being created about this? And as for these counter-drone measures, I probably liken them to a firearm, in so much as a law enforcement officer can use a firearm to shoot someone and kill them. Yeah. But so therefore, I see it as it's just a weapon in their arsenal. And just because it exists doesn't mean that you or I could use it to bring down a drone, because we don't have the authority to use it in that way, just as we can't use a gun to shoot somebody because we're not a law enforcement officer. So yeah, it's a useful piece of equipment, but I also tend to think that if it comes to malicious actors, I think they're underestimating the power of the malevolent little sods out there who choose to use these weapons against them, use drones against us, because DJI is just one protocol. There are lots of protocols. There's open source protocols now that people out there can modify to suit themselves, and they can become unique, and therefore the very precisely tuned weapons, such as what we've been talking about, are ineffective on them, I assume, unless it affects the GPS system. But even then, you've got GLONASS, or whatever it is, and GPS, and you've got an IMU, solar guidance, all that sort of stuff. This is a very small weapon against a very big target, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see whether it's as useful as it might appear to be.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with you as far as I'm one of those folks I hope is not underestimating that threat. I'm constantly waving my arms around and saying, if you took any three of my peers together, I don't think any counter drone platform is going to pick us up or stop us from doing what we want to do. And I point out, at least for us, we're literally trying to do an 80-20 coverage on at least the top 5 COTS stuff that's proliferated. That doesn't even discuss the DIY aspects, if you want to funnel a couple of those things into common radios and whatnot. But yeah, it's a big problem. It's needle and haystack is a common reference. This is like a haystack with multiple needles in it. And at best, at least we as a company are trying to help you pick up a couple of those needles. But yeah, it's a really hard problem. And when you move past casual actors into people that are really determined, it's a much harder problem that involves higher level stuff than simply detecting somebody's RF signals or whatever. Now somebody else mentioned how much of this data is going out, and one thing I wanted to point out was some intelligence figurehead pointed out Facebook as a intelligence collection platform, and that we have all basically willingly opted in to a surveillance platform based on the functionality that we get back. And that's why a lot of people don't say anything or even put any second thought into, hey, what is this app doing? Because they're out flying and they're taking video and they're feeling, like they're awesome. And it's a second thought at that point.
Yeah, I suppose the thing is, but then I could be wrong in saying this, Facebook isn't flying over critical infrastructure, but at the same time, if every other person is on their smartphone, if they're all on their smartphone all around that critical infrastructure, they're kind of doing the same thing, aren't they? Maybe you don't need to. Maybe actually getting somebody to fly over, it's a bit of a pain in the backside. It is much easier to get everybody chatting and doing stuff and taking their photos, their selfies in front of whatever, than trying to get someone to fly over. I don't know. It's a bigger picture than, or a bigger topic, I suppose, than most of us can think. And it's a shame that more attention. Can you hear the dog? The dog wants to go out. It's a shame that more attention wasn't paid earlier on in geofencing security. And again, to defend DJI, they're damned in they do and they're damned in they don't. They have a problem in being the world's most successful manufacturer by far. And perhaps they need to roll out a few restrictions or think about it. I don't know. I don't know what's the answer. I mean, what's everybody's thought on, if I get Joshua in on airspace maps and things like that. But what's everyone's thought on airspace restrictions, airspace maps, things on board? Is it up to the pilot in charge, or should the manufacturers be doing that for us? I'm going to throw that at. Who am I going to throw that? I'm going to throw that at Bruce to start with.
Ultimately, it's always the pilot's decisions, because any of those mechanisms can be worked around. And the problem is, as soon as the manufacturer comes in and tries to decide for you what's right and what's wrong, they're not there on the spot. They're not aware of all the factors. Some of these things can actually negatively impact safety when you might think they're positively impacting it. And perhaps the anti-drone thing is a good example. Now, we have a law enforcement officer who sees a drone and feels that it is endangering the public. He gets out his little device, points it at the drone, tells it to go away, and it goes away and crashes into a helicopter. Now, did that really improve safety? Obviously not. So it's very, very dangerous for safety mechanisms to be implemented in a way that the operator, who is ultimately the final the person in pilot in command, in a way that he has no control over it. And I think that's where we're drawing it. It's a very, very difficult thing to deal with, but we risk replacing good judgment with computer code, and that doesn't always work well. Just ask a few A320 pilots what that means. It's sometimes it just doesn't work, and ultimately it has to be a human thing. We have to decide for ourselves.
There's at least one Qantas pilot who would agree with you.
I think we've all read that this week. We plainly have all read that this week, haven't we? Kevin, who should be running this? Who should be keeping things out of harm's way? The pilot in charge or the software?
Yeah, I think the pilot does have the responsibility at the end of the day. I think there are some interesting morality questions, like I said, in particular areas when there may be technological means to prevent people from dying. When conventional export controls aren't working, for example. So I don't know what the answer to that is. People have mentioned Tesla as an example, and they might be frustrated if Tesla started geofencing where you could drive. Well, flip side of that is if somehow Teslas wound up in Iraq very frequently and people were using them to drive over US troops with their GPS capability, and for some reason Tesla they couldn't stop them from making it there and that happening. Sure, maybe geofencing them there might be a legit, way to, again, stop people from dying. That's a difficult morality question. I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, I've never thought of that, and you're bang on right, because of course when you spoke at the show, you spoke about the Toyota issue, where many Toyotas have arrived in nasty places, and how can it be that quite a few of them are brand new, looking like they were bought in a job lot? It's all very, and this technology is taken to a place we weren't expecting, I suppose. Certainly, a lot of people weren't expecting it. And didn't put anything in place to stop it happening. I know one closed source autopilot a long time ago in drone years. I'm talking about 2008. See, that's like 1,000 years ago in drone years. That was already geofencing those particular areas without being asked by any grown-ups as well. Yeah, I don't know what I'm taking.
How can you not think that it wasn't going to be weaponized? Because the original intent of a drone was a target that we were shooting at. I constantly have to remind people, none of this stuff's new. From 1975 onward, we've been still dealing with the same problems. Geofencing is not new, friends. Came out 50s. My grandfather, he was a captain in Operation Aphrodite, World War II, dropping remote from B-17 bombers, bombs. This control and the link stuff, they canceled the program because they couldn't make an effective bomb out of the thing. So, I mean, drones, they're akin to military and bombing. The first stuff they did with airplanes was, after they thought they were cool, it only took them about 2-3 years to start dropping bricks on folks. Next was handheld bombs, machine guns. This is what's coming. There's nothing we can do about it.
But some manufacturers, I mean, so if I'm an American manufacturer, wow, we're going to rant on now, aren't we? But if I'm an American manufacturer, I have to contend with ITAR. But the Chinese manufacturers seem to not care. How does that work? China obviously doesn't care quite so much as America does about the technology going out. Anyone want to speak to ITAR?
I actually, last night when I was looking for some commentary on that, I found a paper on Chinese export controls and their non-proliferation policy. Let me post it in the Google chat here and see if that spawns any conversation.
Oh, are there people chatting on Google? I can never see that at the same time. But you can share it in the green button on the left-hand side. That's your thing. Oh, there we go. Okay, all right. Maybe I'll get Tian to post it up in front of us here.
Yeah, that was just so you guys can eyeball it over here.
Make it so, Tian. Make it so. Or there we go. Okay, well, what was the bottom line with that for those of us that are reading impaired?
I mean, the first bullet point it says right there is posing a serious threat to international peace and security. I know Brendan Schulman likes to say his drones are peaceful, but I highly doubt some of the service members over in Iraq and Syria think the same way.
Yeah, I've deliberately not been reporting that on SES News because I'm afraid of it, really. It's horrible, and I don't want to give anybody anywhere else any ideas. Perhaps that's a little bit cowardly, but yeah, there's some shocking things have been happening, and it's been done relatively easily, hasn't it, really?
So the main reason I wanted to point this out was a lot of people think for whatever reason that Chinese do not have export controls, and this clearly verifies that they do. Secondarily, while I was going through it, I noticed that it mentioned missile technology specifically, and a lot of the gyroscopes, the accelerometers, and things of that nature, as I understand, are export controlled because of some of that. I'm sure Bruce can pipe up and tell me how correct I am on that and the semantics of those details.
Yeah, interesting though, but China also has copyright laws. It's whether these are enforced that makes the difference. Are these being enforced?
Good question.
Well, I know they were going to try and put distance restrictions and all sorts of things a couple of years ago, but plainly that hasn't come to pass because as things are rolling out, and that company that we are banging on about, really, they are their most successful technology export, I believe, now. So I doubt if they're going to jump down on them too hard. Yeah, no. All right, let's I think Kevin and Rob, I think didn't you guys have to disappear off and stuff like that, or are you still good for time?
Yeah, I've got to pass until my old lady shows back up, so I'm good for now.
I'm good too.
Okay, cool. All right, all right. Because look, with time is knocking on. I want to, before we speak to Joshua, I just want to jump on. Last week we had a guy from the Royal Air Force on the show, and he was fantastic, and in the UK, and very progressive, and they had an education piece that I thought was great. And a similar thing happened 2 days later. New Zealand said, yeah, we'll do the same as well. So I tried to contact their guy, and he's not come on, and he's probably afraid of Bruce, and I completely understand that. But what that meant I would do is I would look at the airspace map for New Zealand to see who he was talking about. And Tian, if you could be so kind, I see you're putting it up there now, gentlemen, with this map. You see those green areas? I'm just going to throw this out to the crowd. What do those green areas mean? So let's have a survey. What do we think green means in New Zealand?
Well, in America, an MOA is a military operations area.
Oh, wow. So it's the same in America, is it? Oh, do you read MOA? But what about the color green? Surely green should always mean you good to go?
Go!
Yeah, come on, green is green, isn't it? You don't make restricted areas green, do you? No, Bruce, over to you, Bruce.
Yes. You know, they do make them green here. I don't know why. Perhaps it's because we have a lot of sheep, but there's some reason for it. And it is kind of interesting because if you, as you say, take a casual look at that map, you think, great, I can go and fly on the green bits, but no, you can't. And yeah, I don't know. But it was good to see that our Air Force jumped on the bandwagon and decided to follow the lead of the RAF and provide some information, because information is key. People don't usually take risks knowingly or on purpose. It's usually out of ignorance. So if we inform people who are flying drones, there's much less chance of bad things happening. It's no good just rattling your saber and saying, if you break the rules, we will crucify you. You've got to tell them what the rules are, tell them what the restrictions are, let them know, because 99 out of 100 people will say, okay, that's fine, I won't do that. But unfortunately, our military is doing it, but our civil airspace regulator has dropped the ball.
Now, when you're telling me you want to go and fly somewhere, some monument or something, can take some video?
Yeah, there's a waterfall not far from where I live here, and there's a lot of people fly their drones there, especially tourists fly drones over the waterfall. Under our regulations, you're not allowed to fly a drone anywhere without the prior permission of the property owner, the owner of the property over which you're flying. Now, this is a river, and it's a very popular tourist spot, and I thought, well, I wonder if these people are flying with permission. So I thought, well, I'll ring up the relevant people and try and get permission. I contacted the local area council, and they said, no, it's nothing to do with us. It's the power company's water. So I contacted the power company and spent 2 hours on hold, and they said, no, it's not our problem. It's the district council. So I went to the district council, and they said, well, we don't know. So these tourists are rolling up, getting their drones out, flying them, putting them away again. They haven't spent 3 hours trying to get permission. And so what they're doing is a breach of our civil aviation regulations, which obviously are not being enforced. So it makes a mockery of the whole thing. This whole property permission thing is lunacy, because it is so hard to comply with that people say, we won't bother. And therefore the effect of that rule is completely negated. And then people say, well, we ignored that rule, let's ignore this rule out of convenience or whatever. And the regulators don't understand the importance of having consistent regulations that are able to be followed easily enough that people will comply. They made it too hard, and therefore people say, not interested. It's a disaster, honestly.
No, it's exactly the same in South Africa, really. The rules and regulations are super hard to actually comply with, and it's allowing people to, not allowing, but it's making people fly outside of the regulations and having no education piece at all. Rather bring them in on smaller steps and have an education piece. But I'm ranting on, and I'm leading that on very nicely to Joshua to say, if I wanted to be compliant with my drone operation and stuff like that, I might need some sort of application in order to help keep me compliant and tick all the boxes in all the right places.
What would you use?
What would I use? Hang on a minute. If only there was some sort of t-shirt or something that would give me some communication of the app I should use. Something with a K and green. Would that be Kitty Hawk IO? And I think tomorrow you're rolling out a new version of it. Over to you.
Yeah, so we're really excited to announce that we're launching Kitty Hawk's Flight Deck. Flight Deck integrates with DJI's SDK in order to allow you to fly your drone, your DJI drone, from within Kitty Hawk. So previously, you used to have to do your pre-flight and mission planning with DJI or with Kitty Hawk, close it down, open up some third-party application like DJI or whatever, something else, and then fly your mission, send all the data to the cloud or wherever the heck it's going. You don't even know. That was a great conversation we had earlier. And then back into Kitty Hawk to log the flight. No more. So now you connect to your DJI drone. The second you take off, we start sending live telemetry back to Kitty Hawk, all stored domestically. You take your pictures, you take your videos, and then the second you land, all of your telemetry and logging is sent to the Kitty Hawk cloud. All of your pictures are stored in the Kitty Hawk cloud, stored domestically. As it happens, we have a number of customers that are critical infrastructure and have requirements to keep their data stateside. So Flight Deck is really enabling all of them. And I'm going to give you a little sneak peek here. So this is a screenshot of Kitty Hawk Flight Deck. And what this does is you can see the map here. We're actually tying in with AirMap's live traffic. So you're going to get alerts for full-size manned aircraft around you, as well as airspace information and various other alerts that you might need if you're flying in restricted areas. And then Flight Deck really enables you to handle the full mission, all the way from pre-flight and mission planning, and then all the way to post-flight analytics and telemetry, so that you can see everything that happened on your flight and how you can enforce a culture of safety. So this is version 1, but we are very quickly going to be rolling out things like speed limitations, height limitations, everything you need to enforce a culture of safety in your organization, so that if you're doing roof inspections, you don't need to be going 150 miles an hour. Let's go ahead and put a reasonable speed limit on that so that we know that our team is operating compliantly and safely. So
am I right in thinking this is sitting within the DJI Go app, or it's a completely separate app? I use Kitty Hawk IO. Is it going to update tomorrow? Am I going to see this tomorrow?
Yes, it's going to update tomorrow, and this is not, it does look like DJI Go, but we did that on purpose since everybody knows how to use DJI Go. We want to change things to be better very slowly, and but no, this is all happening with inside Kitty Hawk.
Okay, and I use Android. Is it going to come to me, or am I going to wait?
Well, unfortunately, you're going to have to wait. Android, unfortunately, with Kitty Hawk we do a tick and talk release cycle. So iOS is tick, and sadly for you, Android is talk. But it's coming.
I think I want a top tick world. I don't want it the other way around. Especially there's DJI seems to be going the Android way with their, I can't remember what their screens are called on their machines now. Will it work if I, for some reason, win the lottery and get a Phantom 4 Pro or whatever with their onboard monitors? Will it work with that, or is DJI still resisting other apps?
So we're just going to be doing the iPhone and iPad to start with, but as we move forward, we really like integrating, with other manufacturers even. So we're starting with DJI on iOS, but as we move forward, don't be surprised if you see other manufacturers using Flight Deck to control their drones and storing their media and their photos within the Kitty Hawk platform. So we're super excited about this. This is a drastic change because prior to this, everything was happening after the flight, right? Look at your logs, look at your data, look at all the stuff after the flight. Now it's happening in real time. And so yes, this does make us have a bunch of new competitors in the drone space, but we're excited to be the first real-time end-to-end drone management platform.
Wow, that was super management speak. What does that really mean?
I can't even believe I got that out in one phrase. It means that a commercial operator is going to be able to manage their team better than ever before, because instead of having to wait until the end of the month to read a report and say, Jim went faster than 45 knots, we can see this in real time and get alerts saying, wow, Jim, what are you doing? You shouldn't be going 45 knots if you're just taking a picture in one place. That doesn't make sense.
I worked for someone like that. I worked for someone who had trackers on the vehicles, and then she would ring us up the second someone up.
Well, Gary, take your foot off the gas, buddy.
But that just created a terrible dynamic within the company. But anyway, that's another thing. So, all right, so that's dobbing in errant users. That's feature number one. How would I manage a team or something like that? So I've got 20 aircraft, and they're all over the country doing their own things. Can I schedule when Dave's going to go and fly that, and Kevin's going to go and fly that? And is there that sort of management stuff in there?
Yep, you can set up missions for people to fly, but most importantly, you can set up permissions. And this is really important. If you have a mixed team of in-house employees and consultants, you're able to say, listen, the in-house employees are allowed to change the checklists, but the consultants, they can only view them. And this is a pretty radical departure from the way other people have attacked this problem. We've decided to let you kind of delegate responsibilities to your team members so that they can do what's needed for a culture of safety.
Okay, so you've got, as before, you've got checklists in Kitty Hawk IO, and so you can see when somebody has completed that checklist, which is good news. If it's an employee, and then you also bring in weather. You bring in weather. Obviously, bringing in flight information. Is there anything else I'm missing that you might bring in?
So after the flight, we bring in all of your airspace information. So you can say, hey, look, I was not flying in the TFR. All your telemetry, so you'll be able to see how high, how fast, GPS location on a second-by-second basis, and then weather, and any notes that you want to bring in as well. So we have that, and then you associate all the media that you took with the flight, number of pictures, videos. It's all going to go and be managed from the Kitty Hawk Cloud with the permissions so that you can put stuff in and the right people can get it out, and you can manage your entire commercial drone operation from one really friendly interface.
We've got the perfect person. Sorry, go ahead.
So have you guys been able to integrate some sort of an SDLC as you rapidly move forward and innovate? Obviously, data security becomes very interesting in a cloud-based situation, and even the role permissions and stuff like that. I'm curious to see how you guys have tackled some of that internally. Is that a hot topic for you guys?
You're going to have
to just say what SDLC means.
Software development lifecycle with a particular emphasis on the security side.
So we do continuous deployment, and that's one of the things that we take a lot of pride in. So when we find problems, we're able to fix them extremely quickly, either on the back API end or the front end. And then on top of that, we really pay a lot of attention to code audits and security. We make sure that we're doing the best we can to keep everybody's data secure. Obviously, when you have critical infrastructure clients, you have to be very careful about putting things out in the wild and making sure that when you deploy to, you know, tens of thousands of users all at once, that everything is going to be correct. So we have a number of strategies that we're using to make sure that as we move forward as rapidly as we do, we're doing so in a responsible manner.
Excellent. The penetration tester in me is obviously drooling as you discuss the platform, and I'm thinking, you know, quarterly and, you know, internal and external audits and whatnot. So I don't envy you there.
Well, Kevin, I think we probably need to have a conversation after a phone call here.
Yeah, we've got that. I was thinking, and before Kevin jumped in, I was thinking we've got the perfect person here to test this system.
Look, I was breaking stuff for free for years, so it's nice that, you know, I get to be on the other side of the table now.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your answer, to give you guys some credit. You know, I heard what I expected to hear. You know, some folks don't even remotely have security on their radar. So glad you guys got it on deck, brother.
Yeah, I was. Let's just say I was a disgruntled youth.
But this is a big cloud issue, and big companies are surely going to worry about this when they have you know, power company ABZ's done 2,000 kilometers of power lines. It's a lot of useful data to somebody else and competitors and things like that, isn't it? So security is going to absolutely be top of mind. And interestingly, I don't know, I didn't prepare any stories. Normally we run this and then we have stories that we know we're going to talk about, because generally once we finish this chat we have better conversations than when we're actually doing the chat. So that's why I've left them one side. So I'm going to throw one in. I don't know if you guys saw that Airbus have joined the fray with big data, right from data from their satellites down to CUAS with Zephyr in the middle, and they're planning on selling you know, the data as required to you. And I think that's a bit of a threat. It's a threat to the small market, the Part 107 market, people that might be using the new Kitty Hawk. It was very much a thing that Thales has been wanting to do for years in Europe. They've been wanting to park large platforms in orbit, grabbing data and then selling that data to whichever person needed it. So the police might need it for a chase, the fire service might need it for a fire, and if there isn't a fire or a chase or something else going on, then it will just be harvesting or grabbing imagery as it goes, and then that will get sold on into the farming community or the building community or whatever. And Airbus have they've rolled that out. They're talking about that. So that's satellites to Zephyr being the 2 to 3 week platform, right down to their CUAS platforms. My throw out comment to see if anyone will grab it is this a subtle change in the marketplace? No, it's not. No. All right, well, not to worry about that one then. Bruce, have you seen anything interesting? You better unmute your mic, otherwise it's not all that interesting.
I pushed the button, but it didn't work. Here in New Zealand, we've got some incredible skies. About 3 years ago, I had a discussion with the airspace regulator, CAA, and said, look, you know, you're concerned about people flying their drones and their models too high and beyond visual line of sight. I've said everybody that buys a drone wants to check out the manufacturer's claims that it'll work out to 7 kilometers and go up to so many thousand feet. I said, why don't you set aside a piece of airspace where people can travel to that area and get it out of their system? Because, you know, even when I started flying FPV, I wanted to fly really high and I wanted to fly a long way away just to see what it was like. So I went out into international waters off the coast of New Zealand, as you would, and tried it. You know, when you fly really high, well, it's not that exciting. You know, just you might as well look out the window of a passenger jet. And if you're flying a long way away, the risks are very high. Not that you're going to hit somebody, but you're going to lose your craft. So I had a long flight and a high flight, and now most of my FPV flying is under 100 feet and within a few hundred meters. It's much more enjoyable. But everyone that I've seen who's bought a drone wants to see how far the damn thing will go. So I said to CAA, how about you set aside a piece of restricted airspace so that we can let people go there and do this in safety, because they're going to do it anyway. And CAA at the time told me, no, it's impossible. It can't be done. You know, we can't do this. And so I took them at their word. Now I see just last week, a company called Incredible Skies has become the authorized administrator for some restricted airspace in which you can go and fly up to 3,000 meters and, was it 3,000 meters? Yeah, 3,000 meters and beyond visual line of sight. So hang on, when I wanted to introduce this as a safety feature, a safety option for people with drones to get out of their system, couldn't be done. Someone comes along with a fistful of cash to do it commercially, no problem, come on in, where would you like to fly? I mean, I hate it when people put a price on safety, when safety is gazumped by the mighty dollar. I mean, it makes a mockery of any regulator saying, we're here to make the skies safer. Unless you've got enough money, then you can do what you like. I mean, really, it's insane, but that's what we're dealing with.
Safety box and money talks, right?
Exactly.
The safety thing, it's a word that's bandied around, isn't it? And that's why I made that horrible, or just use this dreadful analogy of gun deaths, of accidental gun deaths. Not even, accidental gun deaths. What is the threat? The threat is horrible. So how do we book into this airspace then? What sort of fees involved? Have you discovered that yet, Bruce?
No, they don't mention the fees, but you go to the website and there's a little link you can click on. I'll click on it now, and what does it say? It says apply to, it takes you down to a contact form. So you got to enter into the details. So basically they've commercialized this aspect of inviting people to come from around the world and try out their UAV technology in this airspace. So it's definitely commercial. But I mean,
reminded of the old phrase, if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not going to stop people from flying there. It's not going to give people who just want to get it out of their system the option to fly their drones and test them out in a safe environment, because they're not going to pay the money. They have to travel 100 kilometers to get there, or hundreds of K to get there. And they're not going to fork out another, whatever it is, $100, $200, $300 an hour, whatever they charge. And I don't think it's fair that this restricted airspace option is vested in a commercial entity. It should be, there should at least be another area set up for non-commercial users in the interests of aviation safety.
Yeah, I'm hoping, I sort of asked Tian if he could find it, but in the west of England, there's basically from the top of Wales all the way down to Cornwall. Oh, I see, he's looking in Sky Vector. That's a good way of doing it. There's blocks of airspace, and that is all for drones. If you go down a bit more, Tian, I don't know if, and there's a corridor that goes inland into the mountains, and that is for testing of stuff, and I've no idea what it costs to operate in there, but yeah, there's some very forward thinking. America, I think, tripped itself up with the test sites. I can't even remember how many. Joshua, you might remember how many test sites there are now down a little bit south there.
I think there's 7 test sites.
Yeah, I think 7's the number, I think, and I know California didn't get one, and there was big controversy over that sort of thing. But I mean, if you want to test stuff, yeah, there should be places, and if we all pay our taxes, surely we own a little bit of that sky to use or whatever. It's just a national asset that should be divided off for us, so we can go off and have our crashes somewhere discreetly at low cost, because we're destroying our gear, and to bring innovation on. No, I think it's a good idea. You had a good idea there, Bruce. A get it out of your system area of airspace. Perhaps we need to lobby for that around the world.
Yep, and there was another thing I noticed. The Australians have gone bananas again. There's been a Senate committee which has looked at requiring all drones, regardless of mass and whatever, and use, the owners and operators of all drones to attend a training course and to register and to have transponders on their devices. I mean, what are these people smoking? Australia has some of the best drone regulations in the world, that balance between responsibility and rights. And now they've got these, it's actually, it looks like very commercially oriented groups come out and convince the Senate to do an investigation. And they're proposing that, they put these really draconian, incredibly strict restrictions on drone flies, recreational and commercial. Why? I mean, there's no justification for it, And I love it when I talk to people about the risks associated with drones. You say, there has never been a collision between a drone and a full-size aircraft. And they say, but it's only a matter of time. The risk is there. They don't understand how risk works. Risk is probability times consequence. And if we've had 5 years of widespread drone use with no collisions, then the probability is a very small number. And it doesn't matter how big the consequence. If you multiply a very large number by a number that's almost zero, you get a number that's almost zero. So the risk is very low. They're admitting that the risk is low, but they won't acknowledge that, we don't need to account for risks. Like, you say with your firearm chart there, the risk is much greater, but we don't do anything about it. But it's the cause du jour, where everyone hates drones, hysteria, as we've said before. And this is what's happening in Australia. They've just gone nuts over it.
Yeah, I know. I think you're going to have to create a video with that and explain it. You're going to have to go a lot slower with your cause and effect there for me. I'll look forward to a video from the render farm. And actually, we need that piece to hold truth to power when people stand up. We've had the DJI sponsored "It Won't Hurt If a Phantom Hits You" study, but we do need a lot more. And then also that needs to be balanced against just how much useful work are these small systems doing, and how much money are they seeing, the economic sides of it as well. Yeah, I know. Anyway, has anyone else seen anything that attracted their eyes this week? Joshua, have you seen anything? So I need to do your mic.
Yeah, I got to do the microphone. So the Qantas article I thought was really good, that they're finally speaking out. So just real quick recap. It was a profile on a Qantas pilot. If you're not familiar with the Airbus A320, there are 3 computer systems on board. The 3 computer systems are completely separate, and they power the airplane since it's fly-by-wire. They all kind of have to agree. If you saw the movie Minority Report, where the 3 guys in the tank decide if you're guilty of murder in the future or not, it's kind of like that. And so they go through this really scary incident in which one of the computers just decides, nope, this isn't the case. And the plane does an uncommanded dive, like 400 feet in like 12 seconds or something like that, just blasted everybody into the ceiling. It was chaos. And so they're kind of going through this pilot's, he didn't say anything. He couldn't say anything, I think is what it was. And so he's finally come public. If you get the chance to go read this piece, it's pretty awesome. They're a really, really talented crew that saved a lot of people's lives that day.
Yeah, I know. We'll link it when we find it. I read it as well, and it's the voting thing, isn't it? You'd have 3, because if you have 2, it's a 50-50 vote, so 3 takes it out. And doesn't the 380 have 5? I think it's something like that. But I know there's a laws of diminishing returns when you have voting on stuff.
The more you have to go wrong.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is kind of a recurring theme, right? There's been a number of different ones. So there was the Air France accident in which the computers were operating perfectly fine, and the crew drove a perfectly good airplane into the sea from 35,000 feet. And so that's kind of an accident that stands parallel to this Qantas incident. And then there was, during the testing, there was an issue with the Autoland feature, and they lost an Airbus and some crew doing that. So there's definitely, automation, while a beautiful thing, needs to be used responsibly. And we're kind of having this argument here in San Francisco where there are driverless cars all over the road. I know this sounds insane because everyone's like, oh, I saw that it might come, but it's actually, like, I was crossing the street the other day and somebody's kind of sitting there with their hands like this on the steering wheel, and there's LiDAR and a couple of cameras, and it's a little unnerving sometimes.
Yeah, no, I am speaking. Oh, that's good. That's handy. Yeah, we don't see driverless cars so much. I'm surprised there's any arguments in San Francisco. I thought you loved technology, and I believe from what you've just said, that's kind of San Francisco heresy to even doubt technology in any way. And there will probably be some sort of driverless car coming to get you now and take you away somewhere.
I'm worried the driverless police are going to come disappear me.
Yes, very close to making me say my inflatable boy joke again, but I won't do that again. I know that wasn't done that.
We've said this before, and it's worth saying again, we can't fly a 251-gram drone without all sorts of fears for the safety of the planet. But we have 2-ton cars driving themselves around the streets into opposing traffic. I mean, again, money speaks, I suppose.
Well, because the thing with the cars is they're told the rules of the road and they obey the rules of the road religiously. And I think aren't the only incidents that the Google cars have had have been with manned traffic doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, there was one Uber car that flipped over in Arizona, and it was because somebody made a turn in front of it. It freaked out. It totally flipped over. It didn't hurt anybody. But there was the other day I saw one of the autonomous cars got in the wrong lane by accident and ended up behind an ambulance. And they couldn't back up. They couldn't do anything. So I'm kind of eating lunch, and I'm watching as these poor idiots are sitting there stuck behind this ambulance. There's nothing they can do. They're not backing up. They're not going forward. They just gotta wait.
Wow, you saw that? You actually saw that?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Isn't that people draw the double lines around? You know, if you want to, you can go catch an autonomous car by putting, you know, spurious road signs up and stuff like that, and traffic.
Got him.
I've got one. I've caught one. I've got one. Well, that's the whole delivery drone thing, isn't it? Get a net, you know, get the order. Let's get ourselves some parts. I want to build something, so let's order something with that.
Look, if Kevin wants to go into another business, he could be taking delivery drones home with him. It sounds like he has the technology.
He did. He's had to go, and I wanted to probe him a little bit more on that takeover side of it. It would be interesting to know the list. Okay, we can take over this one, this one, this one. It would be very interesting.
He can never share the list. He can never share the list.
No, and yeah, one wonders just really what the state of that technology is. I'm sure
that's the difference between informational security and operational security. Informational security is putting a good password on your cell phone so nobody can see your nudie pics. Operational security is not taking nudie pics.
Yeah, I think really that is a really good place to end this conversation, because you've just put all manner of images into my mind now that can't be taken away. And I'm not going to be. It's late at night. It's after midnight here. I'm not going to be able to sleep now. It's terrible. So last time you're coming on this, that's for sure. Maybe not. Maybe not. So look? We've gone 12 minutes over. Does anyone else have anything else? So with that, I'm going to get a gavel. I've got to get a gavel and say going once. But I should thank everybody first. Joshua, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
No, thank you, really, thank you very much. And I will be posting about Kitty Hawk IO very shortly. It is tomorrow here. It's not tomorrow for you yet. And Bruce is even further away in the future. We're looking forward to your next videos. And I'll say goodbye, subscribe to all those other things, especially do on YouTube. Thanks very much, everybody. Jan, press the button, please.